You ever stop and wonder how a billion-dollar fortune really gets built? I mean, we all hear the success stories, right? But what if they're not just stories? What if they're actually engineered blueprints, like repeatable maps to creating extreme wealth? Well, in this explainer, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to decode those blueprints.
So how is it done? Really? Is it just dumb luck? One amazing idea that strikes like lightning? Or is it something way more calculated, more strategic, something that's kind of hidden right under our noses? The source material we're looking at today says, yeah, the answer is way more deliberate than you might think.
And that right there, that's the core idea. Building this kind of wealth is almost never an accident. It follows these specific, identifiable strategies. So today, we're mapping them out, looking at each archetype to really understand the machinery behind building a fortune.
Okay, let's start at the foundation, with the people who build the actual physical world. These are the billionaires whose empires are built on concrete, on steel, on the signals that our economies literally cannot run without. First up, you've got the industrial king archetype. Think someone like Aliko Dangote. Now, this isn't about building a cool app that goes viral. This is about controlling something a nation can't function without. Things like cement, sugar, steel. This is slow, brutal, capital-heavy wealth. You're not getting applause, you're not giving TED Talks. You're getting leverage. Real leverage. The kind where if your product stops flowing, entire economies start to stall. And right next door, you've got the resource master, like a Patrice Motsepe. This path is about digging, literally, for gold, for platinum, for energy. It's a super high-risk game of mining licenses, shifting politics, and messy labor disputes. But here's the key. When you control the extraction, you control the supply. This isn't clean, easy wealth. It's heavy, it's contested, but man, does it scale. And this shows you a couple of other ways to play the physical assets game. On one side, you have the telecom builder, like Mike Adenuga, who's laying down the literal networks that connect millions of people. And on the other, you've got the quiet infrastructure titan, like Adebayo Ogunlesi, who owns the stuff other companies run on. We're talking airports, ports, energy terminals. You see the shared strategy here? Their power is invisible, it's permanent, and it's so deeply embedded in the system, it's just part of the background. It's power without all the noise. Okay, so we've covered the tangible world. Now let's shift gears and move to the intangible. Part 2 is all about the architects of our digital age. The folks who built their fortunes on the invisible systems of code, capital, and information that pretty much run our world now. Now this slide is fascinating because it lays out two completely different roads through tech. On one side, you've got the tech founder, like Tope Owatonna from Calendly. These guys are totally exposed. I mean, their reputation is on the line with every single bug. It's this brutal, honest path where the product either works or it doesn't. Simple as that. But then, on the other side, you have the tech capital allocator, like Robert F. Smith. They take almost no personal risk. They buy boring enterprise software companies that are already printing cash, and then they just optimize them, ruthlessly. It's capitalism with all the emotions stripped away. Then you have the data strategist, like Alex Karp of Palantir. They don't sell products to you or me. They sell insight to governments, to massive corporations. Their software gets so tangled up, so deep inside a client's decision-making process, that pulling it out would be, as the source says, operational suicide. This is power that sits right next to institutional power. They don't make the policy, but their dashboards absolutely shape reality for the people who do. All right, our third and final deep dive is about manufacturing the narrative of culture itself. These are the architects who figured out how to turn attention, influence, and belief into cold, hard equity, into ownership. But before we meet them, we have to talk about this super important concept, choke points. A choke point is basically a critical spot in any system. It could be a port, a software platform, a distribution network. If you can control that single point, you can pretty much dominate the entire industry that relies on it. And that, right there, is the strategic goal for so many of these blueprints. Which brings us to the media architect. Think Oprah Winfrey or Tyler Perry. They made this incredibly critical leap. They stopped just being cast in stories, and they started owning the studios, the networks, the land itself. Why? Well, because being cast means you need someone's permission. But ownership is sovereign. When you control the means of production, you get to manufacture your own reality. And this playbook has been absolutely mastered by the brand idol, people like Jay-Z or Rihanna. They use their main talent, music in their case, as a doorway. But once they're through that door, they find a real market failure. Fenty Beauty blew up because inclusion wasn't just a nice marketing slogan. It was a huge supply gap in the market.
So the critical step here is they convert their audience's loyalty and trust directly into power on the balance sheet.
And finally, you've got the long-game investors. The athlete investor, like a LeBron James or Michael Jordan, who figures out that owning a piece of the team is way better than just getting an endorsement check. And then there's the real estate compounder, like Junior Bridgman, who quietly turns fast food franchises into massive generational wealth. The common thread here? It's patience, and this relentless focus on owning assets, not just earning a salary.
So, okay, we've looked at all these different paths, but the real question is why? Why do they look this way? The final takeaway here is that these aren't just feel-good success stories. They're maps, and they reveal a much deeper systemic truth.
The single principle that ties almost all of these blueprints together isn't risky speculation. It's control. Control of production, control of infrastructure, control of the narrative. According to the source, these strategies are a direct response to systems where access to capital, to credit, was never handed out evenly. When you can't rely on the system to give you a fair shot, you build your own system. You secure the choke points.
Now, I want you to look at this number. The combined wealth of all the black billionaires in the entire world is about $90 billion. I mean, that sounds like a massive number, right?
But then you see this, and honestly, this slide is the gut punch of the entire explainer. That entire $90 billion can be wiped out by just a handful, sometimes even single tech founders from other backgrounds. The source argues that this isn't a talent gap, it's a systems gap. It's all about who gets access to the networks and the capital that let wealth compound at an insane hyperscale.
And that's why none of these paths we've looked at today are accidental. Each and every blueprint requires a different, immense sacrifice. Some of them cost you time, some cost you your reputation, some cost you your peace of mind. But every single one of them is a deliberately engineered strategy for navigating a very specific economic landscape.
At the end of the day, it all boils down to this one powerful idea from our source material. Power isn't random, it's engineered, and these blueprints, these are the schematics.
Which leaves us with one last question for you. Now that you've seen the maps, now that you know the routes, what do you see differently when you look at the architecture of wealth and power all around you?